Hello, welcome back to another episode of Bearski Method. Today I want to talk about something that actually one of the viewers had brought it up, and that's sustainability of such tanks. As you may or may not know, the feedings are getting obviously more intense, but as usual, they are quite messy. I mean, whether it's a frog or a mouse or a chub, always raw, uninhibited, or wild caught, it gets messy. Wild devoured, the piranhas destroy, take bites and tear and shear, spreading the little, particles all over the tank. Well, obviously in aiding to maintaining such pristine tanks, you need some kind of help. I employ, obviously, the most natural remedies, the most natural ways, which is other ditter fish in combination of live plants, live substrate, creating a actual ecosystem habitat that can self-sustain itself. The canister filters I employ are the cheapest you can probably find, the 704B Sun, and for as many as I have and as many as I use continuously, or non-stop I should say, none of them have failed me. There was a couple of leakage issues, one on a brand new one, which I learned quickly that all you have to do is loosen some screws to give a little more separation to the head, so to speak, of the unit, which then makes it a tighter sort of, tighter fit. So anywho, going back into the sustainability, in a minute I'll walk you through every tank, kind of, show you what I mean as far as the setup and the basics of this, because, well, actually that's what you have to do, go back to the basics. All right, my friends, so real quick, I'll go over some of the specs, so to speak, for each of the tanks. Starting with the oldest tank, my first setup. Obviously, this is a replica of it, as you may or may not have, watched the video previously. The new tank was a 210, and it had a leak. There was a bust across the back panel. I'll show you the picture. And yeah, it resulted in a slow enough leak to give us a chance to come home and save the fish. It's all in the video. It was a pretty panicky situation for me myself personally, but we did learn a lot from it. Anywho, this is the first and original tank, and as I mentioned before, setup took several steps, several weeks to get to reaching the safe sustainability, which is, like I said before, achievable by implementing some very, very natural, simple remedies. As far as this one, the new adult tank, I pretty much replicated the same system, same techniques, the same steps, but created obviously more, different, unique background. So these two are nearly identical as far as mechanical setup. This one back here, which is the Kariba, originally became a more or less holding tank and then a Oscar tank. For now, it's the Kariba home. There's 4 of them there. There's one more hiding. They'll come out as soon as I'm there. You see. So more or less, this is their home, and 120 gallon for 4 Kariba, it's not enough. This holding tank is typically just a holding tank, which holds by the room temperature. There's no heaters or nothing like that. It was where I acclimate the chubs. And like I said before, in this tank, same setup once more. I use a lot more rocks, and they're actually real rocks from the backyard and from the creek, versus actually building that 3D decor, simply because, as I mentioned, a holding tank isn't very presentable. As a matter of fact, the glass is really scratched, and you can see it in the videos. The focus of the camera sometimes lands on the scratch, rendering the piranhas or the Karibas kind of blurry. So we're gonna have to upgrade that tank, and as I mentioned before, the upgrade is going to be substantial. We're going to place at least 400 gallon tank. I found a couple ready-mades, 450 or so, but kind of odd dimensions, so I'm thinking about building my own, and at this point that's probably going to be the way to go. with the build, as I said, we're not gonna stop anywhere near 400. We'll probably reach for 1,000, 1,200, something like that. I was actually calculating about 1,200 at the first go ahead when I had all this mapped out for the river tank, L tank as I called it. Anywho, sustained self-sustainability is basically quite easy, very achievable, and not to mention, wow, it's a huge relief on time span, effort, and everything else. You're still gonna have to do a lot of work. As you see me, I dive in there all the time, trying to, you know, let's just say, keep the tanks pristine for you guys. I mean, and of course, the adults also doing very, very well. Getting along, finding new territories to defend, claim their own. Seems like the girl is doing just fine, hanging with the pack. Awesome. Everyone's doing well. Whether they fall apart a little bit for a few weeks, that doesn't bother me as long as it doesn't affect the fish. But, you know, if we're gonna watch these guys do what they do, we might as well take care of the tanks. You know, I'm just saying, you're gonna take care of the tank, but you won't have to do the very basic, you know, water changes as often. I change water in these tanks probably every 14 days. With them, you know, being a fewer or more members now, obviously the water changes are even more, you know, required. So I may increase them to every 10 days, just like I did with this tank. Juveniles, 17 strong, plus barbarians and rasboras and placos. It's a busy tank, excuse me. It is a busy tank, and for that matter, we're gonna be changing water in this tank every 10 days. So let me show you the canisters real quick, just in case you don't know what's what. But yeah, these are the Sun. I don't know if you can see it or not. Sun 704s. I have 2 on each tank. Very basic setup. Lava rock, some floss, and I think one of each of the pair on each tank has a carbon. Yeah, I use carbon because, like I said, these fish do leave quite a bit of debris behind when they're feeding, and that could spoil the water. So yeah, preventative methods of taking out whatever chemicals and whatnot that I may myself introduce into the water by accident, and otherwise gets canceled out by the carbon. Only 1 carbon, so we're not overdoing it, but again, it seems to be working just fine. Absolutely love coming down here and then observing this new pack and their new head setup, new habitat for the big pack. Sorry for the glare, but yeah, look at them. Oh, hi. You guys are coming out? See you in a minute. Live feeding tonight. So you have to find a recipe for the basically setup that you're looking for based on the population, number of fish per gallon, and what type of fish it is, obviously, whether it's carnivorous or omnivorous or just a herbivore, which most fish are kind of omnivorous. So yeah, this is it, my friends. Not much more that I can add to the self-sustainable setup for fish or predatory fish in specifically, but let me just mention one more thing. I guess what I was meaning to add is the purpose of setting up a natural environment. I mean, obviously not just visual aspect, as to me is very appealing, but in the same sense, it has a lot to do with it, with the overall sort of attitude that it brings with it. Not to mention the, you know, cohesive sort of habitat-like setup that it creates. So in order to set up something like that, you could refer to simple, you know, videos or textbook, or just go outside and forage for yourself. Go, you know, through the creek, through the rivers, through even lakes or whatnot, and see what you can find and then try to duplicate in your tank. All right, my friends, for those of you who are new here, my name is Marek. Everyone calls me Bear or Bearski. This is my place, this is my spot and my technique, or my method as I say. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.